Hey, so you want to know what threw a wrench in big new Brzezinski's big geopolitical game plan? No stiff nonsense. Let's get to the meat of it. Back in 1997, Brzezinski dropped the Grand Chessboard laying out this master plan for America to run the show in Eurasia. Thing is, the world didn't stick to his script. So what went off the rails? And looking back, where did he nail it? And where did he totally whiff? Picture this. It's 2000. And the U.S. government's sitting on a fat $237 billion surplus. Meanwhile, China's entire national budget is 1.3 trillion RMB. Peanuts by comparison. America's got so much cash they're scratching their heads trying to spend it all and still can't. China's leftover funds after feeding 1.2 billion people? Barely a rounding error next to Uncle Sam's spare change. If Brzezinski rolled up back then saying, "Yo, we gotta keep an eye on China, they're gonna be trouble," you'd think he was either grifting for more budget or just plain loony. As an American, what did China have to impress you? Nada. The gap between 90s America and China was so wide you couldn't even dream up how they'd catch up. It felt hopeless. For them, not us. Brzezinski was a smart dude, no question, but America was too strong. So strong, folks thought they were God's VIPs with a perfect system locked in for eternal dominance. They figured their brainpower took down the Soviet Union without breaking a sweat. Russia, a dying mess. Iran, a pushover. China? They had 100 ways to keep it down forever. The Soviet Union's collapse was like a freebie. It went down mostly on its own, but America saw it as proof they were untouchable geniuses. No soldiers lost, no blood spilled, and bam, a superpower's toast with all the spoils landing in their lap. That made them cocky, thinking they could squash anyone without lifting a finger, all thanks to their flawless setup. But here's the kicker. Power bred arrogance and greed. They went from, "we don't need to sacrifice much," to "we don't need to sacrifice squat." Post-90s, America got bossy, stingy, and lazy about paying any real price. Compromise? Nah, whether it was enemies or allies. They figured time and the big man upstairs were on their side. They'd get what they wanted, no effort required. This swagger turned them into a cat toying with a mouse. Rising powers? As long as you didn't bark in their face, they'd smirk, bully you into line, and wait to scoop up your hard work. Bored? They'd topple a government or whack a leader for laughs. Time was their buddy, costs were low, and it all proved how wise and better they were. For 32 years after the Soviet Union bit the dust, this mostly worked. Except for one country, China. They totally botched that one. China came out of nowhere with three things that blindsided the U.S. Insane patience, crazy fast economic growth, and breakthroughs that didn't play by the rules. Asterisk, patience. First, China played the long game, keeping their head down, waiting for a shot. That shot was what Brzezinski saw coming, but it meant jack to America's big shots in 2000. They could ignore it. For China, it was the golden ticket they'd been holding out for 50 years. That kind of endurance? Unmatched. It threw off the US, Europe, even India. Before 2008, China kept America sweet. While Bush was knee-deep in Afghanistan and Iraq, he was fine with China's chill vibe. Head down, cranking out cheap goods, letting the West cash in. They weren't stirring the pot, and their economy hadn't passed Germany or Japan yet, so the threat seemed tiny. Even after China's economy took off, the US and Europe noticed, but that 1.3 billion person market in dirt cheap labor? Too juicy for the elites to turn sour on. Big corporations were raking it in. Why let go? From 2000 to 2009, China's US debt holdings shot from $60 billion to $894 billion, 15 times more. During Bush's run, they snapped up 16% of his new debt. China was helpful and obedient. Why would Bush, riding high, stomp on a cash cow? Sure, China had nukes and missiles, but starting a fight? Too messy. Better to wait for it to flop on its own, like some predicted. Then 2008 hit. The financial crisis kept America busy, and China caught a break. Plus, the Beijing Olympics sealed the deal. After 50 years, they snagged the geopolitical security they'd been chasing, thanks to NATO's eastward push. After the Soviet Union tanked, China was like a budget knockoff, way weaker, not even enemy material. America's real beef was with the Soviets. Once they were gone, no one else measured up. Europe was locked down. Latin America was their playground. Africa was a mess. The Middle East was chaos they ruled. Japan and Korea were under control, and China was playing possum. Russia tried kissing up under Putin at first. Harder than Yeltsin ever did. But even tough guys get shoved around. America, feeling invincible, started pushing NATO east. In 1999, Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic joined. Then 2004, 7 more, including the Baltics. By 2009, Albania and Croatia hopped in. Russia hated it from day one. Even Yeltsin, Clinton's pal, begged them to stop, whining, "You're going to make me lose to the hardliners." America didn't care. When Russia couldn't halt it, they pleaded for no troops or nukes near their borders. In 1997, the U.S. sorta nodded and Russia swallowed it. But by 2002, NATO invited the Baltics and others, and in 2004, they were in. Russia griped, but it was all noise, no teeth. Even then, Putin was still chasing the West's approval, hoping NATO would chill out militarily. Dream on, right? Then 2004's Orange Revolution in Ukraine flipped it pro-West. In 2008, Kosovo went independent with Western cheers. Another slap to Russia. That same year, Ukraine eyed NATO, and though Germany and France pumped the brakes, NATO dangled a vague someday membership. That broke Putin. One last desperate pitch to join NATO. Bush shut him down flat. Then Georgia, egged on by the U.S., attacked South Ossetia in 2008, thinking America had their back. Russia smashed them, and Georgia learned the hard way. No cavalry was coming. That was Putin's screw this moment. He ditched the West, cozied up to China, and China's biggest geopolitical headache started fading. After 50 years since the Sino-Soviet split, they finally got their opening. In 2005, some Chinese dude online predicted China's GDP would top Japan's by 2030. Got laughed off the web. Japan was America's lapdog. Passing it seemed nuts, let alone challenging the U.S. Even Chinese folks thought it was a pipe dream. Militarily? Forget it. Remember 1996, hauling tanks on fishing boats? America probably chuckled. In 2004, China's GDP was $1.96 trillion. Japan's was $4.89 trillion. Even if Japan flatlined, China needed 12 years of 8% growth to catch up. Crazy talk. But Japan grew 3.79% from 2005 to 2012, hitting $6.28 trillion. Solid, right? Except by 2011, China's GDP was $7.55 trillion, 3.8 times bigger than 2005, averaging 21.2% growth yearly. Nuts. From $1.34 trillion in 2001, WTO entry, to $17.73 trillion in 2021, China's GDP ballooned 13 times in 21 years, 13.08% annual growth. Official stats rarely top 10%, usually 7 to 10%. And Western media screamed, fake. Maybe China was lowballing on purpose. The West bought the China will collapse line. Easier than facing the truth. Post 9/11, China got breathing room. WTO entry wasn't kindness. The West saw China as a cheap goods factory, 8 billion shirts for one plane. They thought they could keep it there forever. But China bolted past, faking a limp while sprinting. Neighbors still picked on them, grabbing islands, crossing lines. But by the time the West woke up, China was too big to mess with. How'd they go from J-10 fighters in 2004 to testing the J-20 in 2012? Turn a rusty Hulk into a carrier in a decade? Beat the U.S. to mid-course missile defense? By 2011, they'd passed Japan, and post-2017, they're dropping breakthroughs like it's nothing. Bush Jr. was a dud. America's slide started with him. China's rise did too. Clinton kept debt tight and the economy humming. Bush? Debt exploded from $5.7 trillion to $10.9 trillion. Blew trillions on wars and let China slip away. If he could redo it, he'd ditch bin Laden and focus on crushing China. Brzezinski saw it coming. But even he couldn't sell Congress on China, outscaring the Soviets in 25 years. Just like Chinese netizens in 2005 couldn't bypassing Japan. Since WTO, the Communist parties grabbed every chance to bulk up, dodging traps like pros. Compare India, Brazil, Russia. Same window, some had better starts, but only China transformed. That strategic mojo, way underrated. There you go. Brzezinski's chessboard got flipped by China's patience, hustle, and some serious American fumbles. What'd he get right? The rise of new players. Wrong? Underestimating how fast and sneaky China could be. Now, how's that for a chat?